Have you ever wondered what it really takes to chase a dream that feels larger than life? People often see the spotlight, the applause, and the recognition. But what they don't see are the silent battles fought in the dark, the sacrifices made by families, and the endless moments of doubt that test your very spirit. This is not just a story of fame. It's a story of resilience, humility, and the unshakable belief that even when the world doubts you, you can rise again and again, stronger than before. Dreams often begin with a spark, an innocent belief that anything is possible. When I was young, success looked like a glamorous adventure. I thought it meant working tirelessly, never sleeping, juggling countless responsibilities, and proving myself every single day. Back then, exhaustion was seen as dedication, and sacrifice was considered the only path to greatness. But as life unfolded, I realized that real success is not measured by how much you burn yourself out, but by how you sustain yourself through the journey. Balance became the hidden treasure I had once ignored. Winning my very first pageant felt like touching the stars. At that age, I thought I had conquered the world. But soon came another crown, another title, and with it, a wave of opportunities that I wasn't prepared for. I was only a teenager, wide-eyed and unaware of what was to come. What I did know, however, was that this sudden attention meant my life would never be the same again. The world celebrated me, but behind the stage lights stood my family, quietly sacrificing everything they had for my dreams. My father, a respected physician, and my mother, equally dedicated to her profession, left behind their thriving medical practice in a small town. They chose to walk with me into the unknown, guided only by faith in their daughter's potential. At the time, I didn't fully grasp the weight of their decision. I was too young, too caught up in the whirlwind of opportunity. But years later, I realized their courage was far greater than mine. They gave up their security so that I could chase uncertainty. That kind of love can never be measured. It humbled me and reminded me that behind every shining star is a galaxy of unseen sacrifices. My journey into acting was not born out of experience or training. It was born out of curiosity and courage. I knew nothing about films, cameras, or scripts. My education came from observation, studying co-actors, mimicking their craft, and learning bit by bit how to survive in a world that demanded everything. Survival became my first lesson. In those early years, it was not about excelling, but about keeping my head above water. Every project, every opportunity felt like a test of whether I truly belonged. And slowly, through trial and error, I found my footing. But then came another challenge, moving across oceans to start again from scratch. In 2010, I began exploring opportunities in the United States. Imagine leaving behind a flourishing career, awards, recognition, and the comfort of being known, only to walk into a place where no one recognized your name. It was like being stripped of every feather you had earned, forced to stand bare and humble. Starting again wasn't glamorous. It was humbling, even painful. I had to introduce myself in every room, carry a showreel like a student carrying their RA Summit, and endure the long silence that followed most doors closing in my face. Music was my first step into this new world. I had always loved it, and I believed it could be my bridge to something greater. My songs were played on the radio, albums sold, and on the surface, it looked like success. But deep inside, I knew it wasn't my highest standard. It wasn't the excellence I demanded of myself. I realized that sometimes the world might celebrate you, but you must be honest enough to know whether you've truly given your best. That honesty pushed me to pivot, to try acting once again, but this time in Hollywood. And here lay the hardest truth. No matter how big you are somewhere else in a new land, you start small. I took roles that many thought were beneath me, but I knew they were stepping stones. I embraced rejection as a teacher, humility as my weapon, and perseverance as my only ally. Years turned into a decade, 10 long years of auditions, small parts, cultural adjustments, and endless waiting. People whispered, some mocked it. She left everything behind to play minor roles. But they didn't see the long game I was playing. Every small role was a brick, every rejection a lesson, and every yes a step closer to the dream I held in my heart. Finally, after 10 years of knocking on doors, I was trusted with a leading role. That moment wasn't just about success. It was about survival, resilience, and the proof that no effort goes unseen. For the first time in my career, I received equal pay alongside a male co-star, something I had never experienced before. That single paycheck carried the weight of 2 decades of struggle, the tears of silent nights, and the stubborn belief that dignity and equality were worth fighting for. The taste of equality was both sweet and sobering. Sweet, because after 21 years of giving my best, I was finally valued the same as a man standing beside me. Sobering, because it reminded me of the countless times I had been undervalued, underpaid, and underestimated. It wasn't just about money. It was about respect, recognition, and the acknowledgement of what women bring to the table. That moment became more than personal. It became symbolic. It was proof that if you stay in the fight long enough, change does come. But change doesn't come without scars. Every rejection, every unequal deal, every moment I had to swallow my pride in order to keep going. Those scars became my armor. They didn't make me weaker. They made me stronger, more determined, and fiercely protective of the path I was carving, not just for myself, but for every woman who would walk this road after me. Humility had been my constant companion. In India, I was celebrated. In America, I was invisible. And yet, I never let pride keep me from doing the work that was necessary. I walked into rooms, shook hands, introduced myself again and again. Sometimes people looked at me with curiosity, other times with dismissal. But I kept showing up because I knew consistency beats talent when talent refuses to show up. I wasn't waiting for someone to hand me opportunities. I was building my own ladder, one rung at a time. The toughest part wasn't the work. It was the waiting. Waiting for a yes after 1,000 no's. Waiting for the world to see what I could bring to the screen. And during that waiting, I learned patience, resilience, and the strength of silence. Because sometimes the loudest thing you can do is keep moving forward when no one believes in you. But being a public figure carries a burden people rarely understand. The world sees the fame, the glamour, the red carpets. What they don't see is the cost. Every step you take, every word you say becomes public property. You are dinner, table conversation for strangers. You are judged, dissected, praised, and criticized, sometimes all in the same day. People form opinions about you without ever knowing your truth. Some will call you unprofessional, others unlikable, and still others will build stories that have no connection to who you are. The hardest part is knowing you cannot control any of it. You can only control how you carry yourself in the storm. That realization saved me. I stopped trying to please everyone. I stopped trying to correct every false rumor. Instead, I chose to focus on my truth, my work, and the people who truly knew me. Social media made this battle even harder. With a single comment, a stranger could reduce years of your work into a cruel sentence. If you let those voices enter your mind, they can consume you. I had to make a choice: to live for the approval of millions or to live by the standards of my own heart. I chose the latter. I began treating criticism as background noise and praise as passing applause. Neither defined me. What defined me was the work I put in, the dedication I carried, and the love I had for my craft. It's not easy to wake up every morning knowing the world will judge you, but it's far more dangerous to let that judgment shape you. So, I created a rule for myself: protect your peace at all costs. Without peace, no amount of success will ever feel like success. Through it all, faith became my anchor. Faith that destiny had a plan bigger than my understanding. Faith that no rejection was wasted. Faith that even when I stumbled, I was still being guided forward. I prayed not for fame or wealth, but for clarity, strength, and courage to face the unknown. That faith kept me grounded when the world tried to shake me. It reminded me that success isn't a straight line. It's a winding road filled with trials that shape your spirit. Looking back, I see how each struggle was necessary. Each setback carved resilience into my bones. Each sacrifice by my parents fueled my determination. And each small victory was a whisper that I was on the right path. faith, family, and fierce determination that became the foundation of everything I built. Success, I learned, is never truly yours alone. Every step I took was built on the sacrifices of those who believed in me when I barely believed in myself. My parents were the first, but along the way, mentors, friends, and colleagues also became part of my story. Some guided me with wisdom. Others taught me lessons through hardship. I began to realize that true strength is not in pretending you can do everything alone. It's in accepting help with gratitude and giving credit where it's due. This shift in perspective made me more compassionate, more human. I stopped seeing competition everywhere and started celebrating others' victories as if they were my own. Because when one of us rises, it opens the door a little wider for everyone who follows. That's what legacy is, not what you keep, but what you leave behind for others. But even as I built this life, balance remained my greatest challenge. In the early days, I believed success demanded total sacrifice, work without rest, achievements without pause. Yet eventually I understood that no crown, no award, and no paycheck is worth losing yourself. Burnout is not a badge of honor, it's a warning sign. I had to unlearn the glorification of exhaustion and instead embrace the discipline of balance, resting, spending time with family, protecting my personal life. These were not weaknesses, they were my strength. Because what use is success if your soul is weary and your relationships are broken? Balance gave me clarity. It allowed me to show up fully, not as a drained version of myself, but as someone who had energy, focus, and joy. Real power is not in burning out, it's in shining consistently without burning away. The journey also taught me about reinvention. Too often, people fear starting over because it feels like failure. But I learned that reinvention is not failure, it is courage in its purest form. Every time I stepped into a new industry, a new country, or a new challenge, I was terrified. I didn't know if I would succeed or collapse under the weight of expectations. But I walked forward anyway. Reinvention taught me that your past achievements may open doors, but it is your present effort that keeps you inside. You can't live off yesterday's glory. You must prove yourself again and again, not to others, but to your own standards of excellence. Reinvention is uncomfortable, yes, but it is also liberating. It frees you from being trapped in one definition of success. It shows you that you are limitless. Every public person knows the cost of visibility. People admire the spotlight, but few realize the shadows it creates. Privacy becomes a luxury you can rarely afford. Ordinary joys, like walking unnoticed, laughing without scrutiny, or making mistakes without judgment, are stolen from you. And yet, despite its challenges, I wouldn't trade this life, because every hardship came with purpose. It gave me a platform to inspire, a chance to represent those who never thought they could be seen, and an opportunity to create change. The cost is high, but the reward is higher. I've learned that when you are visible, your responsibility grows. You no longer live just for yourself. You carry the hopes, dreams, and expectations of countless others. That responsibility can feel heavy, but it also fuels you to rise beyond your limits. Still, the human heart longs for acceptance. No matter how strong you become, criticism can sting. There were days I cried quietly, wondering if the world would ever see me for who I truly am. But in those moments, I reminded myself, the goal is not to be liked, it's to be authentic. Authenticity means standing tall in your truth, even when it isn't popular. It means walking into rooms knowing some people will misunderstand you, but refusing to shrink yourself to fit their comfort. Over time, I realized that being misunderstood is not failure. It is proof that you are living boldly. People may not always agree with you, but they cannot deny your courage. And that, I decided, was enough. I would rather be remembered as someone who dared greatly than as someone who played small just to be accepted. The greatest turning point in my journey was realizing that success is not about the spotlight. It's about impact. Applause fades, awards gather dust, and fame is temporary. But the way you make people feel, the opportunities you create, and the doors you open for others, those last forever. I began to focus less on the trophies in my cabinet and more on the legacy I was building. Was I inspiring young people to dream bigger? Was I showing women that equality is worth fighting for? Was I honoring the sacrifices of my family by using my platform wisely? These questions became my compass. And slowly, my definition of success shifted. Success was no longer about being the best in the room. It was about leaving the room better than I found it. But none of this came without self-doubt. There were countless nights when I questioned everything. Was I talented enough? Was I strong enough? Had I made a mistake by leaving my comfort zone? Doubt has a cruel way of whispering lies when you are most vulnerable. Yet I discovered something powerful. Courage does not mean the absence of doubt. It means choosing to move forward despite it. Every time I acted in the presence of fear, I built resilience. I learned that confidence is not something you are born with. It is something you earn by repeatedly facing what scares you. Each yes I spoke in the face of fear added another layer of strength to my spirit. Over time, those layers became unshakable. One of the most humbling lessons was understanding that no one escapes failure. Failure is not a detour. It is part of the road. I have faced failed projects, missed opportunities, and moments when nothing seemed to go right. But each failure became a teacher. It showed me what didn't work, sharpened my focus, and redirected me toward paths I would have never considered otherwise. Failure strips away illusions and forces you to confront the truth. And the truth is, success is built on the ashes of failure. Without falling, you would never learn how to rise. Without rejection, you would never value acceptance. Without loss, you would never treasure what you gain. Every failure I endured carried within it the seed of growth that I would later harvest as strength. Gratitude kept me grounded. In the pursuit of more, it is easy to forget what you already have. I trained myself to pause and appreciate the milestones, both big and small. Gratitude for the parents who gave up their careers for my dream. Gratitude for the colleagues who believed in me when I was just learning. Gratitude for the audiences who supported me across continents. Gratitude even for the critics who, whether they intended to or not, pushed me to sharpen my skills. Gratitude turned my struggles into blessings. It reminded me that no matter how far I had left to go, I had already come further than I once thought possible. Gratitude transformed ambition into joy and achievement into fulfillment. Through all of this, I realized the importance of self-respect. The world will test your boundaries, offer you deals that compromise your values, and tempt you with shortcuts. I learned to say no. No to opportunities that did not align with my purpose. No to relationships that drained me. No to voices that tried to silence me. Saying no was hard at first, but it became an act of self-love. Respecting myself meant refusing to settle for less than I deserved. And ironically, the more I valued myself, the more the world began to value me too. Self-respect became my shield, protecting me from choices that might have brought temporary gain, but permanent regret. It reminded me that true success is not measured by how much you achieve, but by how much of yourself you refuse to lose along the way. As the years went on, I began to understand that leadership is not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the most consistent presence. People watch not just what you say, but what you do. They notice how you handle failure, how you treat others, and how you carry yourself when no one is watching. Leadership is lived, not proclaimed. I learned to lead by example, by working harder than anyone expected, by staying humble no matter the applause, and by lifting others up instead of pushing them down. The greatest leaders are not those who demand respect, but those who inspire it naturally. And I wanted to be remembered not just as someone who achieved great things, but as someone who created an environment where others could achieve them too. One of the most profound truths I discovered is that resilience is built in silence. The world sees the breakthrough moments, but it never sees the years of preparation that led to them. They see the success, but not the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the tears, and the persistence that made it possible. Resilience is forged in the dark, when you are working with no recognition, when you are fighting battles no one knows about, when you are carrying doubts heavier than your dreams. And then one day, without warning, all that unseen work pays off. And the world calls it overnight success. But there is no such thing. There are only years of resilience that finally become visible. Looking back, I realized that my greatest victories were not the awards or the roles. They were the moments when I refused to give up. The mornings I got out of bed after another rejection. The auditions I showed up for when it would have been easier to quit. The dignity I held on to when people underestimated me. These were the real victories. The invisible ones that no one claps for. Because success is not one big moment, it is a collection of small choices to keep moving forward. And those choices, repeated over and over, created the person I became. My story is not about never falling. It's about always rising. That is the lesson I carry with me and the legacy I hope to leave behind. As I stand where I am today, I know the journey is far from over. There will always be new challenges, new battles, and new opportunities to grow. But I no longer fear them. I welcome them because each one is another chance to expand my strength, deepen my purpose, and prove once again that resilience is stronger than doubt. My story is not unique. It is a reflection of what is possible when someone refuses to surrender. And if there is one truth I want the world to understand, it is this: greatness is not reserved for a chosen few. It belongs to anyone willing to dream boldly, work relentlessly, and rise after every fall. This journey, full of sacrifice, resilience, reinvention, and faith, has taught me that life's greatest reward is not applause, but impact. It is not how brightly you shine, but how many others you light along the way. Fame, money, and recognition are fleeting, but the legacy you create in hearts, that is eternal. And so I stand proud not just of the roles I played, but of the doors I opened, the voices I amplified, and the hope I inspired. If my story proves anything, it is that no dream is too big, no obstacle too heavy, and no setback too final. What matters most is the courage to begin, the resilience to continue, and the faith to believe that you are capable of more than you imagine. If you found inspiration in this story, make sure to like this video and visit our channel for more powerful and uplifting journeys that will encourage you to chase your own dreams.